TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, violent clashes were reported throughout the West Bank districts of Judea and Samaria, while police managed to neutralize an Islamist terrorist in Jerusalem's Old City. Israel inaugurates an embassy in the Kingdom of Bahrain, while Papua New Guinea became the fourth country to inaugurate its embassy in Israel's capital, Jerusalem. Israeli President Isaac Herzog concludes official state visits to Slovakia and Austria, respectively. Violent clashes were reported throughout the West Bank districts of Judea and Samaria overnight as Israel's defense establishment remains unrelenting in its war on terror. IDF, ISA, and Border Police Special Operations Forces conducted extensive counter-terror activity in the territories, during the course of which a total of 19 suspected terror operatives were successfully apprehended. Moreover, large amounts of weaponry, including improvised explosive devices that were ready to be used, were confiscated. Alongside violent riots and exchanges of fire that were cited in multiple locations, an improvised explosive device was detonated underneath an IDF combat engineering vehicle operating in the Nul Shams camp in order to expose explosives that were intended for light armored vehicles. Thankfully, no injuries were reported among the Israeli troops in any of the cited events. In contrast, the Iranian proxy Palestinian Islamic Jihad confirmed that one of its operatives was killed when he engaged in a gunfight with Israeli special operators.
The occupation forces raided our refugee camp at dawn. It was a huge force, and we faced them with explosive devices and heavy gunfire, and we damaged their vehicles.
Alongside extensive counter-terror operational activity throughout Judea and Samaria, at approximately 5 minutes after 9 p.m. last night, a Palestinian Islamist woman, armed with a knife, attempted to stab an Israeli police officer in Jerusalem's Old City.
During routine activity at Huda Gate in the Old City, a woman charged at me and began stabbing me forcefully in the area of my waist. I immediately understood that I was dealing with a terrorist. Nevertheless, I didn't open fire because at that moment there were many pedestrians, worshippers who were exiting the Temple Mount. I pushed her with my arms and legs and utilized strength to neutralize her. At that moment she dropped the knife, and while neutralized on the ground and the threat passed, the border police team near me and I overpowered her and arrested her.
In spite of repeated stabs to his waist, the Israeli police officer did not sustain any injuries since the knife failed to penetrate his armored vest. Meanwhile, the United States is reportedly ratcheting up efforts to alleviate tensions between Israel and the internationally designated Palestinian terror groups via Egyptian mediation. These efforts coincide with additional American efforts to identify prospects for resolving the decades-old Israeli-Lebanese conflict, particularly vis-a-vis the delineation of the land border, which has been cynically exploited by the Iranian proxy Hezbollah as a justified motive for repeated provocations against the Jewish state. On this front, U.S. Special Presidential Coordinator for Global Infrastructure and Energy Security, Amos Hochstein, is visiting the region for talks with officials in both Jerusalem and Beirut. After meeting with Lebanese officials, Hochstein stressed that his engagements would ultimately provide an assessment about whether the timing for a new diplomatic push could produce a window of opportunity.
Over the last couple of days, I've been here to listen to the views of the Lebanese government, to go down south and see for myself the blue line and the surrounding areas, to understand and learn more about what is needed in order to be able to potentially achieve an outcome. It is now time for me to also hear from the other side about what their views are, and to make an assessment if this is the right time and if we are at a window of opportunity to be able to achieve it. Clearly, the United States always supports a policy that enables stability and security.
While Special Presidential Envoy Hochstein is engaged on the Lebanese-Israeli front, U.S. National Security Council Coordinator for the Middle East and North Africa and Deputy Assistant to the President, namely Brett McGurk, traveled to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as part of Washington's accelerated efforts to realize a prospective deal that would also include a normalization accord between Jerusalem and Riyadh. Meanwhile, 3 years after the Abraham Accords were signed, under the auspices of former U.S. President Donald Trump, Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen was hosted by his Bahraini counterpart Abdul Latif al-Zayani in Manama for the cordial purpose of inaugurating Israel's embassy to the Gulf Kingdom of Bahrain.
It is with great pleasure that I stand before you today to celebrate the inauguration of the new Embassy of Israel in Bahrain. This event signifies our shared commitment to strengthening and cultivating bilateral relations that will ultimately serve the best interests of peace, security, and prosperity for all the peoples of our region.
Jerusalem's top diplomat for his part voiced Israel's deep appreciation for the deepening relations with Bahrain and gave God all the glory for the establishment of an Israeli embassy in the kingdom's capital.
In the Jewish religion, we have a blessing for celebrating historical events,
for granting us life, for sustaining us, and for helping us reach this moment in time. Amen.
I found here in Manama a real partner to promote our shared interests and friends that share the value of moderation, tolerance, and stability. The Abraham Accords were signed almost 3 years ago by our Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and on the name of the Kingdom of Bahrain, Your Excellency signed as well in this historic event. This marked the beginning of the most dramatic change for the better Middle East in the last 20 years. The Middle Eastern countries have entered a new age of collaboration, stability, prosperity, and peace as a result of those peace and normalization deals made by brave leaders.
Turning to Jerusalem, where Papua New Guinea inaugurated its embassy in Jerusalem today, becoming the fourth country to relocate its diplomatic mission to the Israeli capital. Papua New Guinean Prime Minister James Marape, who is a born-again Christian, who arrived in Israel on Monday at the head of a delegation of pastors to participate in the historic inauguration event, noted that he also intends to sign a series of memorandums of understanding to deepen Port Moresby's collaboration with Jerusalem on a long list of issues.
Israel is a first step, a new venture into us opening an embassy there and having a closer bilateral. Also relevant for us as a Christian nation.
Turning to Europe, where Israeli President Isaac Herzog concluded a 2-day trip to both Slovakia and Austria, during which he highlighted the deep bond which Israel enjoys with both respective countries. During the first leg of his trip, the Israeli head of state was hosted by his Slovak counterpart, Zuzana Chaputova, during which President Herzog emphasized his personal appreciation for Slovakia proactively combating anti-Semitism.
Thank you, Madam President, for the warm welcome. On behalf of the State of Israel and the citizens of Israel, I would like to congratulate you and the entire Slovak people and wish you continued prosperity and growth as a people and as a country. I welcome Slovakia's important and vigorous efforts to eradicate anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial, which raise their heads and threaten moral values, justice, and human dignity in Slovakia and in Europe as a whole.
President Herzog went on to highlight the clearly projected complexities of the Middle East and voiced hope that more countries throughout Europe would join Slovakia in support of Israel against the forces of darkness, hatred, and terrorism.
We find ourselves in a time when the Middle East is changing from one end to the other. The lines of demarcation between the elements of darkness, hatred, and terrorism, and the forces of light, progress, peace, and friendship are clearer today than ever before. I welcome the fact that Slovakia supports Israel on these essential issues and stands firm and stable on the right side of the critical political equation. I call on other countries from all of Europe to follow your lead.
Following his trip to Bratislava, President Herzog continued to Vienna, where he met with his Austrian counterpart Alexander von der Bellen, and subsequently with the Austrian Chancellor Karl Nehammer. Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. I would like to point out that TV7 Israel is a donation-based ministry. Therefore, if you're blessed by our productions and would like to help support keeping TV7 Israel on air, please consider making a donation. You can do so by visiting our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Separately, I would like to encourage you to keep praying for our persecuted brothers and sisters worldwide, as well as for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. Jonathan Hassan wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time.